Welcome, listener. This is Sebastian Nothwell here to talk our favorite tropes with.
Hi, I'm Luna.
Hey, it's Noah Hawthorne.
Hello, this is S. O'Callahan.
Hello, I'm Sarah Wallace.
And the first question for our panel today is, how do you personally define hurt comfort?
So I would say for me that hurt comfort is defined by the vulnerability between the characters. People think that when you say the hurt, it means like a physical hurt. And while that probably is part of it, I don't think that's always the whole thing. I think it can be vulnerability through like some sort of trauma, like an emotional hurt. And it is the other character offering them some sort of comfort and healing.
Playing off of what you said, I think hurt comfort, you have the physical, you have mental hurt. And I think when someone's at their most vulnerable is they're not always the greatest person. So I think that's why I love it so much is that whole, no matter what, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to be there for you, even if this isn't the best side of you. That's what I like about it so much.
Yeah, this is a hard one to add to because I feel like it's one of the tropes that is like most easily definable, which is a good thing. And I think that's why everyone loves it so much, because even though it does encompass, like everyone said already, it's just like the mental, physical, emotional, tough spot that someone might be in. It's just, in romance, but also in just like, found family, friendships, anything. It could be where it pops up. And it's so wonderful.
Luna and Noah kind of nailed it, so I don't really have a whole lot to add except that I think the vulnerability is key, whichever kind of hurt it is. And then the comfort can take shape by way of like physical comfort or just being a presence and friendship. And I think to piggyback off of what Shannon said, it's prevalent a lot in romance, and it's also prevalent in like found family tropes too, the hurt comfort, I think, which is also really nice.
In that case, since we seem to have reached an early consensus as to what hurt comfort is, what appeals to us most about it?
So I think for me, it's going to be something along the lines of, as Noah said, it's us at our worst. And I think on some deep level, even if we have it in real life, but especially if we don't, it's that desire to have someone take care of you, whether it's, a physical hurt or an emotional or mental hurt. It's that person, be that a loved one or a family member or a friend, that is going to stand by you when you're at your worst and when you're at your most vulnerable.
And I think it gives a chance for the person giving care, like maybe if they haven't been so great of a character, or if they're super grumpy, or maybe if they're the enemy, it's that moment where they can kind of switch sides and be the sensitive one and be the caretaker, or, the resistant caretaker. I like those two. And I think for me, I've been through a lot of stuff, and I feel like a lot of people have been through a lot of stuff, and it's kind of nice to see that shit doesn't hit the fan just for you. And you get to see other people get through it and getting through it with somebody else. And if you might not have that in your life, like Luna said, it's just nice to at least get it for a minute in some fiction. And I think especially the mental hurts I relate to, especially like with Arlo and Phantom and Rook. I relate to him a lot with his depression, and he can make him kind of not a nice guy sometimes, or he just kind of pushes everybody away and self-martyrs himself. And I like seeing the other characters draw him out of that. And it's not just one person, it's, of course, the found family. So I think that's something I will always probably include. And don't worry, I hurt them plenty enough, physical like battles and stuff like that. But I think I lean more towards the other side too.
I think for me, it's, again, going back to the vulnerability that you get to see with it. And a lot of the times, like in, a romance story, it's often the first time that we see the characters kind of like showing their feelings for each other where they may not have before. So, something big will happen and that kind of breaks that, if it's like enemies to lovers or something, and it kind of breaks that wall that's been there. And that's always exciting. And I think that to care about someone and to be able to comfort them, that shows that you love them, even if it's not like romantic love, but platonic love, or, with your family or whatever the character situation may be. To comfort someone authentically, there has to be emotion behind that. So
for me, on top of what everyone else has already said, too, I like the way hurt comfort kind of helps fight the stigma of being burdensome by needing help. I feel like our society is such that we've kind of been conditioned to believe that we need to be on our own and independent at all times, and that it's a burden to others if you need help, with physical pain, or if you need someone to kind of be there for you when you're battling depression, like Noah was talking about. If you're going through some like trauma and stuff like that, like I feel like it's nice. Heart comfort is a really nice way to kind of fight the stigma. Like it's okay to need help, and it's okay to be there for other people, and it's okay to need people to be there for you. I think that's one of the things I really like about it. Sebastian?
Yeah, I really think this episode is sponsored by the word vulnerability and just how how like as a storytelling tool and as someone enjoying stories in turn, it's so versatile in that vulnerability kind of letting you pull the character apart and see what makes them tick.
Yes.
You can kind of cut to the core of who the character is and get past all of everything they're trying to project into the world, everything they're trying to make everyone think of themselves, and kind of what is truly going on there deep down. And in romance particularly, it allows you kind of to get characters to open up to each other very quickly. And like, as Noah was saying, you see a whole new side, not just of the person being comforted, but also the person doing the comforting, because you get to show kind of perhaps a softness that maybe the rest of the story wasn't showing.
Or their, perfect surgical skills.
Or their perfect surgical skills. And then you get to wonder, wait a minute, why does this character who's not a doctor know how to perform surgery?
Exactly.
Will this come up later? Reader, it will.
And like you said, there's a lot that can be revealed, Maybe this is the moment where they admit why they don't want help, even though they're taking it right now. And yeah, I think it reveals a lot. That's a good way to put it.
Also, as you all have said, like, as a reader and enjoyer of media, it is gratifying and cathartic to see a character being looked after even when they're not at their bravest and most powerful and most admirable.
Yeah. I like too that it's relatable. It's something that I think in some way or another we all have felt that before. Probably on both ends, but on one end or the other, where it's just like we have experienced that moment, so it helps you connect to the characters as well.
Yes, exactly.
And I think the last time we discussed this, you brought up the "it's rotten work" quote, which fits very nicely.
Yes.
I don't know, I can't recite the whole thing, but...
To quote Tumblr's favorite Anne Carson quote from her translation of Euripides, Pylades says, "I'll take care of you," and Orestes says, "It's rotten work," to which Pylades replies, "Not to me, not if it's you. And if you have a very specific kind of brain rot, this quote puts you on the floor."
Yes.
I am indeed flawed.
This book I'm listening to right now, one of the main characters is like that. He's like, I'm a complete asshole. Like, I'm just rotten. Like, everyone hates me. Why are you sticking around and being nice and taking care of me? And the guy's like, because you're not an asshole to me.
Oh,
You know what I mean? Like, I think you're great. So.
That's awesome.
Do we have an ideal ratio of hurt to comfort?
Oh, that's a tough one. I don't know. Like, you don't want to go too long in the sense of the healing has to take place. Like, that's the point, either physically or emotionally.
So, as the youth call, all hurt, no comfort would not necessarily be satisfying.
No, because it's not just about that character coming out of vulnerability, but it's about like that hope, isn't it? Because that's the point of it being in fiction. Which sounds really macabre because that's alluding to, well, actually, some of us don't succeed in that healing, is that there is an element of healing to it. You have to get through the hurt via the comfort from a loved one, a family member, found family, and come out the other side. Like, it's the hope that comes with the hurt comfort, I think, that is what draws readers to it.
Yeah.
I think it has to be well earned, but you don't want it to be a trauma fest, especially if you're writing romance or even fantasy. I mean, we can only see the main character get tortured for so long before we're like, all right, what's next? Like, let's move it along. I mean, that's not always in all cases, but you want to root for them and you want to give the reader reasons to root for them. I mean, maybe if you're reading horror or something, it's a little bit different. But yeah, I definitely think you have to have enough scenes to balance out the hurt. I don't know what the ratio is, but I do think there has to be moments of hope of kind of seeing what the other side could be if you can just get there.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know that I could pick like a specific ratio because I feel like across the books that I read personally and probably have written too is just like it really depends on the type of story that's being told. So I think for some stories it's going to be heavier one way, and for some stories it's going to be, so there's going to be more hurt than comfort, and then other stories you get a little less hurt and a lot more comfort. But for me, I think, I mean always, but especially with this kind of like roller coaster of a trope, I always need a happy ending too.
Agreed. I don't think I have a good ratio either, sorry. Because I think in the past I've said that it needs to have more comfort than hurt, but also I think there are some instances like Shannon was saying where like there are certain books where depending on the characters, you kind of need a little bit more hurt first to get the comfort. It needs to be like equal or a little bit more hurt than comfort. And I think books with chronic illness rep or mental illness rep, I think those books tend to have a little bit heavier dose of the hurt to the comfort because that's kind of real life.
Mm-hmm. And ongoing.
Yeah, it's an ongoing cycle of hurt and comfort, and that's necessary in the book and necessary in real life. So, do you have a ratio in mind, Sebastian?
I would say yes. I feel like the answer itself in terms of raw numbers is very boring because it's probably like 50-50 or like a 60-40 in either direction.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But the reasoning behind that, I'm hoping will be more interesting because it's, like we've said, all hurt, no comfort is not necessarily satisfying. But I feel like I tolerate all hurt, no comfort better than I tolerate no hurt, all comfort because, like, as someone who's been living in a very specific corner of the internet for several years now, all hurt, no comfort is where most media leaves us, but that's where the fanfiction begins. So, like, when I see a character on Ripper Street get ripped apart, as the name implies, that's where we open up Archive of Our Own and just sort by hurt comfort tag, and it's fine. If the media has been insufficient, the fanfiction will provide. But if a book is sold to me as hurt comfort and it is all hurt, no comfort, then yeah, I'm gonna be disappointed as a reader.
Question about that. With the AO3 and media combined, would you say that the fanfiction, like if you incorporate fanfiction into the total sum of the original content, like that obviously changes the ratio. So if it's like all hurt, no comfort in the original content, like how much comfort do you need in fanfiction to feel like you scratch that itch?
No one said I'd be doing maths today.
I know, sorry. It doesn't have to be an actual mathematical equation. I'm just curious about like how does fanfiction figure into, because I think when you're talking about like going to fanfiction in order to kind of make up for the lack in original media, I think in that case fanfiction for the reader becomes an extension of the original content.
I would agree, yeah. Because, like, if all of the hurt is taking place in the original media scene, then most of the fic that is a continuation of that scene would be just the comfort. So together they create that 50-50 ratio.
That makes sense. Okay.
That said, if we're focusing strictly on original content without any supplementary fanfiction material, no hurt, all comfort feels like the bad kind of melodramatic. Because, like, if the hurt is the catalyst for the vulnerability, too much comfort and not enough hurt is going to give us either out-of-character vulnerability, we're going to get people confessing all of the trauma in their life history at a paper cut, which feels weird.
Yeah.
Or it's just going to not create the vulnerability in the first place, and the scene might as well not exist. The trope is essentially just not there because there isn't enough to make the vulnerability happening, so it's not serving the story or the characters in any way.
Yeah, I think all comfort, no hurt is like to Noah's point earlier, it's not earned. So the comfort isn't earned by having insufficient amount of hurt prior.
Agreed. That said, what stories use this trope best?
Well, through fear of fangirling, I am going to say Noah's books, just in general, because I've just finished this week Matt's Daughter and Adrastus and When Witches Dance, and the hurt comfort in that is perfection to me because it really gets the ratio right, because there's a lot of hurt. but then there's a lot of comfort as well. And like, you just come away from that feeling so satisfied because it's the healing and the being there for people when they're not at their absolute best. So I do want to just shout out to fellow podcast host Noah.
Oh, thank you.
But you're welcome. I'm still like in a bit of a reading slump from those ones, so because they just hurt so good. But prior to that, my answer was Nicole Knight's series, Fire and Brimstone Scrolls.
Yep.
Yeah, Fire and Brimstone, and they deliver. They absolutely deliver on the emotional and the physical side of Hurt Comfort. And again, those were books. The series is finished now, but those books really did take me through all of the Hurt Comfort emotions and then left me feeling very, very sort of satisfied and cathartic afterwards because of the journey that the characters went through, and their comfort and their healing was hard earned, but very much earned.
Hard one for sure. That is a really good series. And I remember when I recommended it to you, I was like, okay, listen, I know that I have traumatized you, but she does it way better. Like, this is like levels above me, and it was really good. And there was a lot of mental, physical, a lot of growing. One of the best character development arcs I have ever seen. Besides that one, I would recommend Tarot Sequence by Katie Edwards. The main character deals with a lot of different mental illnesses, and he's a hero, but he's very untypical hero. I love him very much, and he goes through a lot, and the comfort and the found family in that is amazing. The relationship between him and the love interest and what's called his companion, basically they grew up together, best friends. Like, the platonic love there is phenomenal, and I love it very much. And I feel like that's just a series that does Hurt Comfort very well, both physical and very interesting ways, because it's an urban fantasy world and the way magic works is really interesting, and in the toll it can take, because I like when magic takes a physical toll on the user. That's the kind of magic systems I like the most, and it really does in this series. So I like that a lot. And I think the last really good Heart Comfort I read was actually Sebastian's of his friends out and Mr. Warren's Profession, which is like, the first one had a lot of hurt in it, both physical and mental, and multiple times. And that one was like a lot. But it made it worth it because there was a lot of healing and nurturing and bedside sitting, and it was great. I loved it.
Thank you. I wrote that book specifically for the Hort Comfort people.
It was directly, that was it.
Yeah. Sebastian, I think you do a great job of making memorable Hurt Comfort. A lot of times it's dropped into stories and a lot of people do it well, but you just, I don't know, you elevate it and you make it so purposeful that it's just like, that's what people remember about your books, you know, and for it to be such an overarching and, like I said, memorable thing, I think that's really impressive. So definitely, you know, Fiorenzo is one of my favorites for Hurt Comfort. Absolutely. And then, yeah, I have a lot. It's one of my favorite tropes to read, I think. Sarah's book, Letters to Half Moon Street, is always one of my favorites too, because it's definitely there, but it's so much on the softer end. And it's like, I don't know, I love that this trope can kind of be so many different like ends of the scale, you know, because it's Fiorenzo, we have a lot of you know, blood and things going on like that, where it's just like, oh my gosh, this is so intense. And then Letters to Half Moon Street it's intense, but in a much more, you know, gentle, like kind of suspenseful, like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen kind of way. Whereas, you know, Fiorenzo is kind of in your face, Hurt Comfort, which I don't know. I like that. I like that it's so kind of just like you can make it what you want it to be depending on the story. So
Agreed. Thank you, by the way. I think I would add for my list, Cat Sebastian does a really good job with Hurt Comfort. Actually, both my people I'm going to add are kind of similar. So I'd say Cat Sebastian and S. O'Callahan both do an excellent job of the Hurt Comfort, specifically with chronic illness and mental illness rep, where it's like an ongoing hurt and comfort cycle kind of thing. I feel like both authors really handle that really well in terms of how chronic illness can kind of show up differently for everyone, and flares can be more intense or less intense, and so the person doing the comforting kind of has to gauge the amount of comfort that the person who's hurt needs at any given time, because it can fluctuate. Specific books, I would say Fella Enchanted for S. O'Callahan. And then for Cat Sebastian, Two Rogues Make a Right has a chronic illness rep that's also really good.
thank you.
You're welcome. Sebastian?
So, in terms of books, I would say I really appreciated in A Rival Most Vile by panelist R.K. Ashwick has a particularly inventive use of hypothermia in a fantasy setting, which I appreciated. I feel like hypothermia is such a standby inciting incident for hurt comfort scenarios because it's everything you love about hurt comfort combined with everything you love about the only one bed trope, because most of the treatments for hypothermia are specifically get naked and get close.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, like, narratively, for romances in particular, it's very useful. And then Letters to Half Moon Street by Sarah Wallace had a particularly inventive use of fever/illness in a fantasy setting, because I thought I was getting my beloved historical romance standby of character gets damp one time and instantly gets pneumonia. But then there was a twist, and I realized it had been foreshadowed throughout the entire book, and I was so happy.
Thank you.
To get one of my favorite tropes in a whole new way. And outside of books, but very on brand for me as a person.
Here it comes.
Get ready, everyone.
We can all guess.
Say it with us.
Season 1 of AMC's hit horror anthology series, The Terror. Because you take all of these repressed Victorian men and you put them on a boat and you trap them in the Arctic, and they are having the worst time, but through having the worst time, they are getting so close to each other. There is dire hurt, but there is so much comfort, and to ultimately dire ends, but the love was there, damn it, because the horrific circumstances break down the societal expectations of Victorian masculinity and allow for a vulnerability, there's that word again, that begets human connection between these characters and permits deep emotional bonds that would never have been possible if they were still within the bounds of the Empire. You've got tender brow mopping, you've got hand kissing, you've got sobbing embraces, you've got it all. There's a reason I'm incapable of shutting the fuck up about the show, is because there's hurt comfort woven into every single episode.
That was a very passionate explanation there.
I expect no less.
Absolutely.
What would you like to see more of with regards to this trope?
So the first, as always, is more queer stories with it, because I always want more queer stories, like in any trope, but always more queer stories with hurt comfort, because like you said in The Terror, it allows people to break outside of stereotypes and societal expectations, but also for sort of standard fantasy, probably more in the sort of romance genre, if we're talking hetero, is I would love to see more of the guy being the one that's hurt. It always seems to be the breaking point is that the heroine gets hurt, and then that's like the cusp of that sort of enemies to lovers arc. And that's when, feelings start coming out. And it's always the female that is the one that's hurt. And then the hero or the, villain or whoever is the one that shows the comfort and the care. And I would like to see that flipped a lot more often.
Co-signed.
I feel like that happens too with the quote unquote, the femme side. And, not even just with hetero, but it's always, the tiny guy or whatever, like let big men cry,
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I feel like we need more of that for sure.
Yeah, in male romance, it feels like a lot of the time it's the bottom who is also coincidentally the femme, who is also coincidentally the smallest one, who is also coincidentally the one who is perpetually in need of rescue. Which, no, and also different, please. Different story, please. Can we please?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Can we please break out of this particular stereotype, especially?
Co-signed.
I like it when they have to rescue each other. You know what I mean? Like one gets cared for and then later on the other, like kind of how you did in Forenzo. Like I thought that was really cool.
A back and forth, a twist and turn, and also a femme top. Discuss.
Who will get stabbed next time?
Right.
We could do a whole podcast just on that, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But that's a whole episode right there. Let's park that as a whole episode.
Swords are a metaphor for...
Oh, goodness. Let's see. What would I like to see more of? Like I said last time, I think the biggest one for me is to see it being used purposefully, because a lot of times I'll see it. Sometimes in books that often, unfortunately, end up being ones that I didn't love reading, it feels like it's another one that's kind of just like sprinkled in there, just to kind of like a blip on the map. Kind of like, oh, ouch, I hurt my finger, and now they're embracing. It's just like, oh, okay, that's fine. But my favorite kind of hurt comfort is just the kind of like, there's a lot of emotion and there's a lot of, again, vulnerability, and like a real connection forms because of it. And it's done purposefully. There's like a lot behind it rather than just like a little kind of tossed in thing to bring two people together.
Agreed. And what I'd like to see more of is, I feel like I brought this up a lot on this episode, but I would like to see more like chronic illness rep in general, really, but specifically in the hurt comfort trope, just because I think that's an underrepresented community in terms of like both chronic pain and chronic illness and like chronic mental health issues. I'd like to see like the less glamorous part of all of that, as it's mental illness is not going to be a glamorous thing to discuss, as like Noah's brought up. So like I'd like to see more raw mental illness rep, more rep of people who are in pain or who are sick for their entire lives, basically, and the experience of like having that and then still deserving and receiving comfort, even though that's never going to go away. I'd like to see more of that in romance and fantasy.
Yeah, for sure.
Very well said.
Agreed.
The nonlinear nature of recovery in particular would be good to see more in fiction.
Yeah, agreed.
I would also like to see more realism in the medical side of Hurt Comfort, because, like, how many movies have, oh no, one of the leads is shot, this has been the catalyst for someone to confess their feelings, and now they're having sex on top of the bullet wound, and it's just like, no, you have to stop. You can't do this right now.
Right.
And kind of branching off from that, I think there's a lot of untapped potential in the fantasy genre as the perfect hurt comfort vehicle, because you can just make up a magical poison or curse that has all the symptoms you want to incorporate, and a cure that is as easy or as difficult as the narrative needs it to be, without the limitations of real-world injuries and diseases, which gives you an opportunity to get so creative with it that I feel like a lot of people are sleeping on, and I would just love to see more wild creativity in that particular genre.
Yeah, definitely.
I love getting creative with that.
Yes.
So fun.
Yes, you do, Noah.
The blood crystals will forever be like, I don't think I can ever beat that.
I'm still talking to my therapist about that.
Blood crystals on its own is just such a powerful phrase.
Inspires fear, truly.
Yeah, I apparently have a thing for throats and knives. I don't know. After the third time, Luna's like, why do you keep doing this to me? I'm like, I didn't realize it was a trend, but apparently so.
I literally messaged him. I was like, again? Are you kidding me? Again?
Oh, whoops.
Listen, when you find something that works, you just got to go with it.
Well, and it makes me wonder, like, why do I keep going that way? Like, what is my subconscious trying to tell me? And I'm like, you know what? It's probably better off if I just keep writing and don't worry about it.
Right.
We're not going to look too hard at this.
Yeah.
That said, our next question is, have you used this trope in your own works, and if so, how?
Yeah, I mean, because we've discussed so many different levels of hurt comfort, it can be quite subtle and, dare I say, gentle, and it can be quite, I think, Shannon said, in your face was the term we used.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I literally only have one book in my back catalogue that doesn't have it. And moving forwards, I do plan to use it a lot more, because I think I've really discovered a love for it as my interests as a reader have sort of evolved and grown. I just tend to sort of lean towards that more than anything now. And, it encourages you to get creative. But yeah, it's definitely in all of my books bar one.
I will say the last one I read by you was pretty top notch. I was very upset, and she deserved a lot of comfort after that. So
yeah, it's only going to get worse, I'm afraid.
Yeah, so as Luna's mentioned, all my books have it. Some of them, like the darker books, it's, could be more on the physical side. Of course, they all have issues, so it's on the emotional side as well. But with the cozy series I'm doing, it's kind of the same way, but it's more of a focus on emotional and mental hurt and kind of that never going away chronic thing that Sarah's bringing up, and that really close to my heart. And a lot of people really seem to connect with it in that series. So that's where I'm at. Going to continue to write it in all forms, different forms in my books.
Yeah, my fellow books, my duology is pretty dripping, I would say, with hurt comfort. Basically any form of hurt comfort you can think of. Like Sarah said, there's the chronic illness that kind of slaps you in the face. Chapter 2 of the first book, and then it continues throughout the series, and that is linked very strongly with magic. So I had a lot of fun kind of exploring what that looked like and how it progressed through both of the books. But just like platonic hurt comfort, family, love interest, it's all there. So if you like hurt comfort, I I think you'll find something that you would enjoy in those books.
And my books, Letters to Half Moon Street, has some physical hurt comfort, and Education of Pip has some emotional hurt comfort, specifically like depression and anxiety, so like mental and emotional hurt comfort from a found family. And I'm gonna add, Shannon, you can tell me if you agree with this reading or not, but I feel like Breeze Bells and Bridegrooms has a little bit of hurt comfort sprinkled in the sense of like get a character with social anxiety who gets overwhelmed in social settings, and then the other character will kind of help him out with that part of it. So it's like kind of a light hurt comfort, but it is helpful one in that that is something that happens in real life, so it's kind of nice. And then I think
Yeah, I agree.
okay, good. And I think on the flip side, the other character has anxiety, and the character with social anxiety helps him kind of process his anxiety too a little bit. So I think we've got a bit of give and take for comfort.
Yeah, I agree. They both, it's like different, different scenarios that they both kind of help each other out in. It's soft, but it's there.
Yeah.
It's relevant to their character development, which I think is the key,
Yes,
you know what I
yes.
mean? And it's
Yes.
that kind of vulnerable moment between them, like, oh, kind of admitting and helping each other out.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's that kind of emotional and psychological form of hurt comfort that we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. Which I love that kind. And then we saved best for last, the King of Heart Comfort. What about you?
Yeah.
Sebastian, have you written any hurt comfort books?
We're not sure. The readers want to know.
No. End of podcast. So, short answer, yes. Longer answer to follow. We got migraines caused by magical transformation, O King Holly King, and in the sequel, we've got hypothermia and animal bites in The Holly King's Peril. We've got burns and burn scars in Mr. Warren's Profession. We've got pneumonia in Throw His Art Over. We've got shoulder dislocation and dueling wounds in Hold Fast. And we've got appendicitis, puncture wounds from an animal attack, puncture wounds from a plain old-fashioned stabbing, pneumonia, and poison in Forenza.
Is that all?
I think that's all of them.
That's not even counting the inner turmoil.
Well, yeah, but that's kind of woven throughout.
Yeah.
The inner turmoil is kind of the assumed background noise for all storytelling.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can say anything about a quote unquote plain old fashioned stab wound, I think it's implied
Yeah.
that there's a lot of other like mental and emotional anguish going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your standard stab wound.
Common varietal.
But yeah, if you're looking for all hurt comfort I could get into a book as a personal challenge to myself, you're looking for Forenza. If listeners would like to learn more about your works, where can they find you?
So you can find me on my website, which is just lunaday.com, and all of my books are available there or through Amazon.
You can find me on my website. That's Neshama Publishing, Neshama, and you can find all my social media, books, and everything like that there.
Yeah, the easiest way to keep up with me and what's going on is on Instagram at SOCallahan.
And you can find me at sarahwallacewriter.com or on Instagram at sarah.wallace.writer.
And you can find everything I'm up to at sebastiannothwell.com. Thank you so much for joining the panel, everyone. So excited to talk more tropes with you soon.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for having us on.
It's a good time.
And thank you for listening.